Before we begin, a note. This episode contains grief, sadness, and the loss of a sibling. If that's not something you can sit with today, it's okay to sit this one out and come back another time. Hi everyone, I'm Crystal Kayeeb Zeb. I am a transformation coach and a shaman, and I help people around the world shift their limiting beliefs and bring their souls back home. This year, I also became an author when I wrote my first debut anthology, The Human Experience: Stories of Spiritual Healing and Transformation. This podcast dives deep into these stories and will be witnessing the healing, change, and transformation that all of my clients experienced through this book. We'll also be going along as the audience and listeners to learn how we can apply these lessons and wisdoms to our lives today. So excited to have you here, and this is my second episode, and let's just get right into it. Today's episode is dedicated especially to eldest daughters. Wherever you are out there in the world, as an eldest daughter myself, I have something to tell you. You don't always have to hold it in together for everyone else. It is okay to let go. I think as eldest daughters, we're taught and raised to do it all on our own. No crying, no whining. We are the ones who fix. We are the ones who correct, and even to a certain degree overcorrect. We are always 3 steps ahead because we have to be. We are type A. We are easy to be anxious. We learn how to read the room before anyone else even bothers to read us, and we respond with precision to fix. And for a lot of our immigrant families, being the eldest daughter is not just a personality thing. It's an assigned job description. You're a translator. You are an appointment scheduler. You are the one who holds out emotionally or holds emotional capacity for everyone else. You're the one in the room who's maintaining, navigating, problem solving between perhaps 2 siblings who are arguing, perhaps a sibling and a parent that's arguing. You are the one who's always doing it all, always trying to be the one who solves everyone's problems. Because we are our family's first line of defense. And you are all this before you even got a chance to figure out who you were outside of your role. But again, you can't do everything on your own, and sometimes pretending to be strong is actually what will break us. And today's story covers exactly what happens when someone hits that ceiling. This is Big Sister. Now, I want to introduce you to my client, Vivian. But I knew her as Trung because when she booked a session with me, she actually used her legal name, the name she was born with and given at birth. When I got to meet her, she actually told me that, she goes by Vivian because Vivian is an easier name to use. She used that when it came to other people talking to her, doing things at work. That was the name she went by just to make it easier, just to, in a sense, if we're going to be real, it was the easier name to assimilate to American culture. Now, Vivian is your typical eldest daughter. She is the first line. She is capable. She is smart. She is educated. She is the one being a role model and setting expectations for her younger siblings. She is also the one who will burden all of your burdens. She was the family translator, caretaker, and she was the parentified child. To be quite frank, she just did it all. And at the beginning of this story, we actually open up with her and her mom at the welfare office because it was important to really set up this client in a way that people could understand how she was raised. Her and her mom are at the welfare office. She's only 10 years old, but she's doing all the translating for her mom. And they're at the welfare office because they need food stamps. And her mom can't speak English. She can kind of understand, but she can't speak English. And she's just sitting there because every time the county welfare office person or worker talks to her, she's waiting for her daughter to translate. She looks over and she's like, what did they say, right? And so her daughter is already taking on this big girl persona because even in the book, I describe her as using her big girl voice. Because I remember when Vivian was telling me this story, it's almost like when she went back in time and memory, she also activated that big girl voice again. She spoke with the welfare office to me. She goes, yeah, when my mom and I went, my mom waited for me to explain everything to her, and I remember looking at like the white county worker and putting on my big girl voice, and I was like, is this going to give us food stamps? And she remembered that so specifically. And the voice that she used, it's almost like she went back in that moment to use that big girl voice again. And her own mom even calls her Vivian, not Trung, because there's a part where she asks Vivian, is this where I signed Vivian? And she uses that name. She doesn't use Trong. She uses the name that gets things done. Sometimes the people around us start to associate us with our roles and they treat us as such, right? They treat us in this way. They don't remember or they can't even help us recall our own identity. Sometimes it is reinforced by our parents. Sometimes it is reinforced by our loved ones, even when it's not intentional. But the thing is that what really gets her is right after her mom signs these paperwork and the county worker leaves the office, he kind of leaves the door ajar. And as he leaves the door ajar, Vivian tells me that she'll never forget the moment that she kind of saw another girl her age. But the difference was that this girl got to play. She was in the play area. She was touching all these toys. And there was this brief moment that I could see in Vivian's eyes when she was recalling this for me that she kind of wondered, why can't I play too? Wow. Oof. I may trigger myself during this podcast because I think that moment of why can't I play too is so relatable for all eldest daughters where we see our younger siblings or we see our cousins who get to be outside, who get to go play, and we wonder why we have to babysit or be the ones who sit inside the house and we have to take care of everyone else. Anyways, we're gonna resolve that later in the podcast, but I wanted to bring that up. That is something that I think all the starters can also relate to. That pain of like, why can't I do that too? Or why can't I just be that as well? Be a child, right? But in that moment, of course, she couldn't because her mother really needed her. And the thing is that her mom is actually really proud of her. Her mom is actually really proud, and she's like, wow, like, I'm so grateful you know English and you can do all of this translating for me. Your mommy's a smart girl, you're so smart. But Vivian, of course, takes that compliment and then she packs that image of the other kid playing away her mind. And again, you can tell from Vivian's observation, there's like a hesitation in her in which she kind of wonders, why can't she just play too? Now, in most immigrant families, again, like I said, to be an eldest daughter is an automatic caretaker. It's more than just a responsibility, it is your livelihood. And your livelihood is to put everyone else above your own. And so now that you have background on Vivian, I kind of want to explain how she ended up meeting me. She didn't come on her own, actually. Well, she did, but how she got recommended to me was actually through another client, a friend of hers who was a client of mine, a longtime client. And she could see her friend crumbling. She could see Vivian crumbling. And so she reached out to me and she was like, hey, girl, I've got this friend. I think she needs help. But I don't think she even knows like what's going on in her own life. Like her little brother just passed and I've been checking in on her. I know she's crumbling, but she's, being a eldest daughter, the type. And I was like, yeah, I know, because my client also knows that I'm an eldest daughter, and this is something that we navigate with or we have to work on all the time. She was like, so I'm recommending her to you, and I'm sending her your way, and she should be writing to you soon. And my client, it's literally like I kind of low key forced her, but I just told her to be open and she doesn't have to. She doesn't want to. So we actually hopped on a brief call and then she decided, yes, she would love to work with me. And that's when I got in my car because she came personally recommended that I was like, okay, yeah, I'll come and see you at your house because that was what Vivian requested. She was like, I know we could do this over Zoom, but can you just come over because I think it would be different if you just came here, and I prefer having someone here at my house. And when I get there, something that I noticed about her house was that it was immaculate. To this day, I'm still very like awed by it because it literally looked like a new build construction home. And when they like designed the inside for you to kind of walk through to see if you would like the home and if you can get a feel for if you want to live there. And I remember looking and I was like, wow, this girl has everything like so immaculate, so particular. And I was just so like surprised. And I was just actually personally taking in taking notes for myself, like, wow, I would love to do that with my couch and my photos and be like this and like that. But one thing I did notice was that her house also didn't look like it had ever been lived in. It was staged to be pleasing to the eye, but there was no energy of really ever fully living in it. And one thing caught my eye in particular, which was by the fireplace mantle, there were these little toys and action figures of like Mother Mary, Hello Kitty, a Buddha, Goku, Sailor Moon, and it was a very like childish area or childlike area, I want to say, not childish, but a very childlike area that I remember distinctly remembering that in my mind. And I was like, okay, everything in this house is immaculate, but there's just this one section that seems to not fit the vibe. And I'm going to assume that these action figures or these toys or things and things like that are probably pretty special to her. And not too far from that is actually a photo of her family as well. So I kind of got the gist that, that's a area where she paid like homage to her family. And we sat down, and I remember like just how pristine and well put together she was. But it's so funny because when I actually talked to her, she was so relaxed and sarcastic in the way she talked. She genuinely reminded me of a younger version of me that was so chill, so relaxed all the time. And we kind of dive right into it as we sit down. She just starts talking and she cracks her knuckles actually. And so she just kind of goes right into it, and she tells me that, long story short, her family got into a car accident and they had to go to the hospital, and they got some blood tests drawn for her brother Tony and her younger brother Tony. And when they had blood drawn for Tony, they found out he had cancer. That's when Vivian goes right into like big sister mode. Like, okay, I'm gonna fix this. We're gonna take care of it. I'm gonna do all these things. And when I do all these things are gonna happen. Here's all the doctors we got to go see in the Bay Area. Here's all these places we got to go. I'm going to set all these appointments for you. And as her parents are just like in their mind processing that perhaps their son has cancer, she's already 3 steps ahead, planning, preparing, doing everything she's got to do, rounding up all the troops, looking up all the doctors she can that specializes in the cancer that he had. And she also, in this fleeting moment, thinks for a second that she should probably buy life insurance just to dot her I's and cross her T's. And she does. And as they're going in and out of the hospital, having all these visits, Tony's losing so much weight. 3 years passes by. And he actually kind of comes out of it, where doctors are now like, yeah, he's okay. Actually, he can make it home. You can come and take him. And they start to set that up where they're like, oh my gosh, Tony's about to come home finally. We're so excited. But almost a few weeks, about a few days and a few weeks right before he's about to come home, he catches something. And I remember Vivian telling me about this, where she said he caught something where it was irreversible. It was almost like he had caught some form of like the flu or something. I knew he was still a little weak somewhere. That's what she expressed, but that he caught something, and suddenly they had called her and they said, you better get to the hospital right now and bring your family. So she does. And when she gets there, she finds out that something has happened. They get there, she screams at them. She's like, what happened? He was supposed to come home. We were so close. What happened? What happened? What happened? And all the doctors could say is, he's not going to make it. And it's best that you all like get together and spend the time you have with him right now. So they do that. They spend like their final moments with him, and she is there with her parents and her younger brother, Ruben. So she's the oldest. She has two brothers. There's Tony, who has cancer, and then there's Ruben, her baby brother. And she can tell that through her anger and being so upset with the doctors, that she has a look where she looks at Ruben and she realizes that he's not okay. and she looks at her parents and she realizes they're not okay. And so she swallows her own emotions and says, I will be okay for everyone else. Her parents kind of somewhat, in a sense, had each other, so she realized she needed to be there for Ruben. So she swallowed her anger, she kept in her tears, and then she just held Ruben as all of them watched Tony take his final breath. Whew. Did not expect this story to be so heavy for me as I'm recalling it. But I will do my best to pause as well and get us through this podcast because I think that her lessons and wisdoms that she learned is really meaningful here. And so for many, it's understandable why she reacted this way. It's probably also because there's a sense that her family needed her, right? And so she needed to put on that brave face. But the problem is that she actually never processed her feelings after. She just went straight to organizing his funeral instead of his coming home party. She took care of everyone else. She assessed her family before they even assessed themselves. She signed up her younger brother for grief counseling, and then when she talked to her dad, she kept her stoic face. But when she talked to her mom, she had a tissue box ready, and she was just navigating everyone else's feelings except for her own. She went, like I said, she went straight back into funeral, organizing, clearing things out, decluttering, getting ready for the funeral, talking to her parents, making sure her brother was going to grief counseling, making sure that they're all okay. She signed herself up for grief counseling too, but she had just, in a sense, as she explained it to me, she was just sliding on by in grief counseling, where she was just like, yes, I know that this is happening because of this. Like, she took on a very logical approach where she was like, yes, I know why I did that because I feel this way. And so clearly she's also very self-aware. She was extremely competent, right? And that was an eldest daughter in action, navigating through like tough experiences and tough situations with all of this precision, just like how eldest daughters are raised to do. She began handling everything on her own, doing it alone, and not really allowing room for space or help, even when she was offered it by friends. She would use that practiced eldest daughter tone, that big girl voice that was like, no, yeah, I'm good. I'm navigating. I'm doing my thing. And after the funeral, the thing is that she went straight back to her life. She did not go back to doing anything else. She went straight back to her life. She went back to work, dating, being normal. And on the surface, she was, well, she was high functioning at work and she was just doing everything she needed to do. But one thing that happened that she never really told anyone about was her insomnia. And it was putting her in this place where she was losing weight and that weight could no longer be hidden by makeup. And she even knew logically, she tells me this, she even acknowledges that logically she knows that the insomnia is from losing her brother. She knows this. She actually over explains her explanations to me as we're talking. Now, what you're witnessing here is a complete incompetence, self awareness, like I said. She's extremely competent, she's extremely self aware, being able to navigate crises under pressure and negotiate the cost of a funeral, arranging and planning the event. It is all competence. But the thing about competence is that it does not equate to processing real and true emotions. And being simply self aware of your emotions is not the processing of emotions either. There is a very strong difference between really allowing the emotions to pass through you versus just being aware of your emotions and understanding I am grieving or I must be going through grief. There's such a stark difference. And this is where it starts. The competency becomes a mask. And if you wear that mask long enough, you can forget what your own face looks like underneath it. And so, as we're in this session, and she's telling me about the insomnia, and she's telling me exactly how all these things are happening, she also goes on to admit something to me. It almost felt like a slip of the tongue, where she goes, yeah, and I've been feeling really creeped out at night, where I feel like I've been getting like watched or someone's watching me. So I ask her curiously and I'm like, okay, like who do you think is watching you if you knew? Like, or what do you think is watching you? And she goes, I don't know. I thought it was Tony's spirit. I thought maybe it was his soul and he just missed me as his big sister. So I just kind of let it stay. So I was like, okay. And as she's talking, I'm also processing information from my spirit guides. I'm also processing information from creator, and they're telling me these different things. But the thing is that the information I'm being given can be also extremely overwhelming for my clients. So instead of overwhelming them with it, I like to ask them questions that actually will lead themselves there, where they actually lead themselves. Because sometimes it's not until we realize something and we say it out loud that it becomes true for us, or that we recognize something. And so I didn't want to just give her information, I wanted her to understand it first. I asked her, if it was Tony's spirit, why do you think that Tony's spirit feels this way? Because she started to say, yeah, like I was starting to get scared because I can hear that this spirit or this ghost or this demon, as she said, is crying, or it's like murmuring, or it's like wailing or something. I don't know what's going on. I'm kind of scared. And so I was like, okay, well, if you did know, like, why do you think they would be wailing or crying? And do you really think it's Tony now? And so as she processes, she goes, maybe it's not Tony, but I don't know whose sad ass it is. And I knew that when she said whose sad ass it was, I knew she was being sarcastic. I knew that that was also her line of defense, where she was kind of defending herself from not feeling too deeply. And she goes, maybe it's my mom. She goes, like maybe my mom's soul is like haunting me or something. And then she goes, if it's not my mom, then maybe it's a ghost. If it's not a ghost, then maybe it's a banshee. And if it's not a banshee, maybe it's like Vecna from Stranger Things. And then her mind takes her to this other place where she's trying to make sense, make logic, and also redirect the conversation and make it kind of like in a way where she's aware that this is a serious conversation, but she wants to make kind of like a joke out of it to kind of like keep herself protected, I want to say. And so she even goes on to say, my theory is that something like Stranger Things is happening where, after my brother died, it must have opened a portal and all these demons are coming through and it must be Vecna. And so I was like, okay, I understand that you feel like it could be Vecna, and I understand that you think it's all of these other possibilities. So I just suggested, how about I go in and cleanse your house like how you wanted me to, and then let's kind of take it from there and see what it is. She goes, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so as I actually go into the spirit world, I do a lot of heavy cleaning, and I notice that every room in her house in the spiritual side carried some sense of pain. Whether it was anger, it was resentment, it was grief, whether it was sadness, every room held like a different emotion. And at the same time, all of these rooms trapped these emotions. It was almost like these rooms represented feelings and emotions that she had compartmentalized and put away, and she didn't want to look into them. And so every time I opened a door, it was an emotion. It was like maybe sadness, or it was grief, and it was like a lot of anger. And the thing is that all of these emotions she was actually feeling wasn't actually really towards anyone in particular. It was actually back towards herself, that she was angry with herself. She felt resentful towards herself. She hated herself for not being able to bring him home. And the thing is that while I'm clearing, I'm actually looking for her soul. I'm looking for her soul too, because I'm making sure that the soul is also okay. And so as I clean, I finally get to this place where I'm like, okay, let's figure out where this crying or this wailing is coming from. And I ask Creator to show me who is doing the crying and where is it coming from. And Creator leads me down a hallway in the spiritual world. Creator leads me down a hallway, and I can hear this almost like sound of like wailing and grief and mourning, and it's coming and it's echoing in the hallway. And that's when I turn and I look, and I walk up to Vivian's bedroom door because I see that that's where this spirit is, this entity, this spirit. And I can see that they're trying to jerk the doorknob and they're trying to get it open. And I asked them, "Are you lost?" And when I asked that, I almost can't even recognize this spirit because half of their body is like missing. So I have to describe what they look like. They were bald, they had no hair. When they turned around, I saw that like there were fingers missing on their hands. One hand completely was gone. One foot was gone. The eyes, they were hollow. There were no eyeballs, and the mouth was falling. It was falling off because whatever, whoever, whatever this entity was, it was there for a really long time. And I could tell that when I came and I asked them, "Are you lost?" they got excited because they were like, "Oh my gosh, Vivian, is it you?" And I was like, Vivian's not here right now. Is there something you want to say to her? And they go, "No, I only want her and I want to talk to her." And I could sense so much sadness, grief, and anger and resentment from this entity as well. And this all happens in a split second. In the book, it feels long, but when you're going through these spiritual sessions or you're on the other side, you can receive information in like an instant. And I was trying to talk to this entity and ask what was going on, asking the spirit what was going on, and they tell me that they feel abandoned by Vivian, that Vivian forgot about them, and they were unhappy and they were looking for her. So I was just kind of like, okay, what is it that you need? Do you just want her to acknowledge you? What is it? And they wouldn't quite tell me what it is, but they started to get angry with me. They were starting to get short with me. They're like, "You're asking too many questions. I don't want to talk to you. If you're not her, then get out of my way." And I could sense that in the spiritual world, they were making themselves appear bigger and bigger and bigger. And what they were trying to do was make themselves appear bigger than me. And so as I went in and I was looking at them, as they were making themselves bigger, I didn't feel fear. I felt a lot of sadness. I felt a lot of sadness for them. As that moment happened, I asked Creator to show me who they were. The walls slammed inward. The spirit surged upward, vast and furious and grieving, filling the hallway, filling everything, ready to swallow the distance between us whole. I breathed in. I breathed out. "Creator," I said aloud, "show me who they are." The soul froze. A light came down, gentle as dawn breaking. As the light touched the silhouette, the darkness began to peel away and the pulsation began to slow. The face became familiar, the body fully formed, eyes full of light, a face I knew, and eyes I recognized. "Who is it?" Vivian's voice cut through from the physical realm. "Who's the spirit?" I couldn't answer right away. I knew this face. I had been looking at it since I walked in. "It's you." I paused. "Vivian, it's your soul." Vivian stood up. Tony's photo fell. Face pale in cold sweat, heart pounding. Body folded, breath shortened, hands shaking, eyes wide. As she paced back and forth, trying to control and maintain her breathing, she spoke, her words trembling. "It was me?" She questioned between breaths. She looked at me. "It was me?" Before I could answer her, her hyperventilation became a shrill scream. I stood to meet her. Her scream turned into a wailing that echoed so loudly through her home, I became worried her neighbors would hear. Control slipped from her fingers. The messiness, the unraveling. She had to let it all go in that moment. Now notice what Vivian didn't consider. For not even for a moment did she consider that the presence watching her could have actually been her own. And she assumed it had to be someone else. It had to be her mom. It had to be her brother. It had to be even Vecna from Stranger Things. But as silly as it sounds, the saddest part about this is that she never even considered herself for a moment. because the truth is that she stopped believing there was anything left inside her to find. And if you've spent years operating only as a role, it can be hard to see your identity, and it can be hard to see who you are at your core. And sometimes, even for you, you may feel that there's no one there to look for anymore. The thing is that Vivian operated as an eldest daughter, but she never operated as Trung, never just as herself. And that was what also broke her in this moment. Not only experiencing the loss of her brother, but recognizing that she's been lost herself this whole time. The feeling of being watched, the feeling of being lost, the feeling of something missing. Everything was hitting her all at once. She allowed herself to grieve Tony's loss in its entirety for the very first time. And then she grieved for the little girl who had to grow up too fast as the eldest daughter, who did everything right as the big sister, and still lost him at the end. I held her like I was holding myself. I let her cry, long, hard. I knew too well the cost of being an eldest daughter, a big sister. We remained on the floor until her crying slowed, her breathing calmer. "Are you ready for her to come home?" I asked. Vivien nodded. And so this moment in our session, in a sense, was twofold. Again, her grieving the loss of her brother for the very first time. Something real, something raw, something true. And yet at the same time, she also grieved how much of herself she gave away to others and lost herself in the process. We sat on the floor for quite a while. So after she actually got into her hyperventilation where she realized it was her soul, and she freaked out and she was starting to have short breaths, I was trying to help her through her panic attack to the point where she was still crying and still wailing, but I hugged her and I was like, "It's okay, right? Like, it's okay." And she was pulling me in for a hug, so I was trying to calm her down. I was helping her breathe, and her legs just gave way under her, and we just both fell to the floor, where we just kind of sat there, and she just cried and cried and cried, and she just needed someone to hold her. And I knew what that felt like. I know what it feels like to feel like you have given something your all and you've given something your best, and yet it could still not happen for you. It still did not play out how you had hoped and wished it would. And also in this moment, there's also this amount of overwhelming grief and disappointment, and maybe even resentment for yourself for not getting it accomplished, for not doing what you were supposed to do, or fulfill your role in the ways that you were supposed to fulfill it. And as I'm getting ready to go back in and bring her soul home, Creator whispers to me, and Creator goes, "Use her home name." I look at her and I take Creator's recommendation and I say, "Trung, Vivien is waiting for you." Trung looked at me, her eyes registering what I just said, the name I just used, what I just called her. Vivien bursted into tears. "Trung," Vivien began to speak out loud. "I'm sorry." Vivien's voice echoed into the spiritual realm, and Trung's eyes lit up, almost as if she had not heard her voice in a very long time. But tears soon followed, and she asked me to channel her message. I followed him, Viv, the day he left. I looked everywhere, and I couldn't find him. He just disappeared. And so before we continue and I explain what happened next, I want to go back to that moment in the welfare office at 10 years old. That was the day that Vivien started to become a name that was useful, the one that could translate, could bridge, that could make her mother's life easier in a system that wasn't built for her family. That was an eldest daughter operating in an immigrant family in America, trying to be the first line of defense, trying to be the very best version of herself so that her family could survive. And Vivien helped her family survive, whereas Trung could not. and Trong was the little girl left standing, wanting to play in the play area, wondering why she just couldn't play too. However, Vivian was who she became so that she never would have to ask that question again. When Tony passed, this is when the split happened. Vivian, the body, went into eldest daughter mode where she was like, okay, I've got to organize all these things and I've got to take care of it. I've got to do it now. But Trong went into big sister mode and she chased her little brother through the heavens to bring him back home. Trong showed me the hospital room where Tony was the moment his soul left his body. I watched Vivian and her family hold Tony's hands as he took his last breath. His father whispered that it was okay for him to go. His mother wailed, saying goodbye to her sweet, sweet boy. Vivian held Reuben as he started to cry for his older brother. The heart monitor started slowing in beeps. Tony's soul began to rise above his body. Trong shook her head. No, you're supposed to stay. You can't go yet. She reached out of Vivian's body, her fingernail barely touching Tony's hand, before he dashed out of sight. Tony! Trong leaped out of Vivian's body, flying straight through the ceiling and in pursuit of her little brother. You can't leave yet. You have to stay. She chased him through mountains and valleys, through tunnels and caves. Come back. Don't go. She cried, calling out to him. We still have so much to do. It's not time yet. Please come back. But as Vivian turned off her heart and operated as the eldest daughter, Trong turned off her logic and operated as the big sister. She chased, she shouted, she screamed for him to come back. Trong followed Tony into a field of fog where she lost sight of him. Where are you? She shouted, her voice echoing through the veil of fog. In the distance, a bright light appeared, and Tony was gliding into it. She ran as quickly as she could, but it was too late. No! He crossed into the light without a returning glance. As she shouted for his soul, an invisible wall blocked Trong and she tumbled backwards, rain pouring hard on her. She screamed and screamed, getting back up and hitting the invisible wall again and again, tears streaming down her neck. Give my brother back, she shouted. The skies ripped, lightning struck. Tony! But the portal remained closed. She was left alone, heaving, crying, and the fog dispersing, drawing in the darkness. The invisible wall remained, and with all her might, she cursed at the skies. Her clothes were soaked, her voice strained. She persisted for days, but he never returned. Defeated, she turned back home, but the road was dark, cold, and rain-soaked. Please do excuse my emotions as they're coming up. I think these emotions come from a place of just understanding my client so closely and just being an eldest daughter and also recognizing and feeling the cost of what it takes to. I want to say this, that there were actually a few reasons for this chase. The most obvious one is obviously that Tony is her little brother. She's going to chase him. She's going to go after him. And she's going to do anything she can to bring him back. I know that as an eldest daughter myself, the lengths I would have went to just to make sure that my siblings were okay. But there's also a second reason. And the reason why she chased was also because she was also fearful of herself. You see, Trong and Vivian had grown up all their lives needing to be perfect, and when they weren't, they self-punished, right? That's why Vivian functions the way she does. But for Trong, the soul, she believed that if she couldn't get Tony back, Vivian would punish them. Vivian would punish her. And whether it was through neglecting her or maybe ultimately abandoning her. So Trong also pushed herself to the extreme, going to the edges of heaven because she loved him, but because she was also afraid that Vivian would abandon her and punish her if she didn't bring him back. But when Tony's soul didn't return, Trung believed she had failed, and so she came back home into a place she no longer recognized. When Trung finally found their way home, it had become something entirely different. A different kind of energy had settled in, and every door Trung opened to look for Vivian was instead a room full of sadness and grief, filled with resentment and anger. The energies in those rooms had formed and manifested into grotesque entities, attaching itself to her soul, fragmenting bits and pieces of her, stealing what parts still remained whole. Trung was scared. She was frightened. "Vivian, where are you?" Eyes missing, feet gone. She screamed into the dark. "Vivian!" she shouted into the abyss. "Vivian, where are you?" Tears streamed down her face. "Please, don't abandon me too." My vision split into two screens. Trung was shouting in the dark, and Vivian was continuing with her day. A little girl's voice escaped from Trung's lips. "I'm scared." Vivian couldn't hear Trung, and Trung couldn't see Vivian. What makes me emotional about this part in the book is actually that as it was actually happening in our session, again, when I'm receiving all of this information in the spiritual world and all of these downloads are coming through and I'm getting backstory, it happens instantaneously. And I'm experiencing all this in a second, in like a millimeter of a second. And all of these emotions like are coming through me because I'm experiencing exactly what the soul is experiencing, and it's almost like she's telling me exactly how these things have occurred. And I remember feeling all these emotions, and I'm feeling them again now because it was so tragic, it was so emotional, it was so hard. And yet, as the healer, the practitioner, the shaman, the coach, I have to maintain my energy. I have to be able to hold myself so that I can hold space for them. And so, as I was also going through this with her, I'm navigating my own feelings of like, okay, girl, we got to keep it together because our client needs us in this moment. And so it's also learning how to balance and navigate a lot of different emotions in this moment, similar to an eldest daughter, similar to how an eldest daughter has to learn how to navigate rooms and emotions in these moments. And the part that really also, I want to say, made me emotional during this session when I was also with Vivian and Trung is that I recognized myself in her, where I was like, wow, we can hold a whole family together and we can perform being normal and we can do everyday functions. But wow, we cannot recognize our own faces in the dark. We cannot recognize our own pain, our own tears of suffering or crying in the dark because we have learned how to put them away so well to a point where we we have essentially abandoned those parts of us. And so when we processed how Vivian's grief was twofold, Vivien also came to understand that this soul fragmentation wasn't only because of Tony, but truly also because of herself. And she was grieving the two losses, like I said, her brother, herself. She had lost her own identity long before Tony passed, and his passing only amplified the grief she was already feeling from being so invisible. I want to kind of connect all of this back. The competence we spoke about and the fractured soul really is all one story. It's what happens to a person when all they know is their role, that when their role has become their identity, they don't know how to operate outside of it. They don't know how to function outside of it. They only know that role. And truly, it can also be because that role makes them feel safe, that's all they are allowed to know as well. Strength, usefulness, and function, these are not separate problems. They're the different masses that identity erasure wears. And Vivian equated strength to function, to logic. She equated grieving and emotional moments to weakness. But her strength is what led exactly to the haunting, to her soul haunting her, because her strength said, let's just function and get through it. But healing asked, how do we get through this? Are we going to allow ourselves to feel to get through this? And now I want to ask you, how many of you can recognize yourself in Vivian's role? The dismissal of your own feelings, or feeling like other people's feelings mattered more than your own. And maybe you weren't allowed to grieve or to feel any certain type of way. Maybe you were only taught to lead, never to follow, to never fall behind, but always to be upfront, to sacrifice yourself for others. But when you're alone in the dark, I want to ask, who are you? And that's what I want to ask you today. When you take off the roles and responsibilities and the burdens, who are you? Do you know who you are? Now, Vivian didn't need more willpower or strength. She's already proven that she has both. But she did need someone outside of her to be able to help her navigate these emotions and to have the awareness to help her go through this healing, to help her go through this grieving process. This was an ongoing pattern, not a single incident, which is exactly what my mentorship is built to hold. Not a one session fix, but spending time with someone who can help you see what you haven't been able to. To learn more about my mentorship and healing sessions, I encourage you to book a free discovery call with me today. Now, you may be wondering, what did it take for Trong to come home? Well, what it took was Vivian's acceptance that they were never going to be perfect, but that they were always enough simply as who they are. And they always were. All Trong wanted was to return back to herself. She didn't want to feel abandoned anymore. She just wanted to be loved and accepted by the very person she felt so far from, which was herself. We grew up too soon, Vivian said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. I made us work so hard. I just wanted us to be perfect. But it made life hard. It made things hard for us. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Trong. Trong's face lit with a peaceful expression. She had been waiting for a very long time to come home, back to herself. We were always enough, Vivian shared with Trong. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't. Trong wiped a tear, and behind her, the door she was trying to open lit up. A white light outlined the door. When it opened, colors shimmered. Trong turned around to look, her eyes glistening with hopeful tears. I bit my lips, witnessing the creator bring them back together, reuniting after what felt like an eternity apart, pulled at my heart. As they became one, Vivian exhaled a long, shuddering breath, as if her lungs had finally remembered how to fill completely. And as we wrapped up the session and Trong and Vivian came back together, Vivian had one more question for me. She told me about a reoccurring dream. She goes, in the dream, the doctors would tell me that Tony is better and he's healed and he's ready to come home. And I would take his hand and I would say, yeah, let's go home, brother. And in the dream, Trong would try to take Tony out of the room, but she would wake up before they make it to the door. And then she also asked, why is it that when Trong went chasing after him, he didn't turn around? So I said, these are actually very good questions. Why don't we go ahead and ask Tony himself? But when I called for Tony in the spiritual world, he didn't come. And if you listen to my last podcast, my last episode, the truth is that sometimes souls come, sometimes they don't when they're called. It really depends. But Tony didn't show up, so I turned to the creator and I asked creator, why is it that these things happened? And what creator said was that it's important for you to understand. And creator brought me inside Vivian's dream. And as creator shows me the dream, they draw in closely to Vivien and Tony's hands. As they're heading for the door, Tony's hand would slip out of Trunks. And in the vision that creator showed me, Tony would smile and he'd watch his own sister head for the door. And he said, go home, sister. This isn't where you belong. And the reveal here is that Tony was actually never trapped. He never needed saving, and he never had. The chase, the fear, all of it, it was never about really rescuing him. He was already set free. and he was free because of her. She gave him safety, peace, and that was always more than enough. He wasn't afraid when he went, he was ready. What she had been chasing through the heavens all this time wasn't him. It was actually permission to stop chasing and to come home to herself. That door was always the door back home, the creator shared. Today, the door finally opened, not because Tony was set free, but because Vivian was. He was already set free, and he was set free because of you. You showed him safety. You showed him peace. You went above and beyond for him. When he went, he wasn't afraid. He was ready. I exhaled slowly, my own nose reddening. A tear fell. Vivian was silent, processing. Then she smirked. Yeah, she blew her nose. You're right. I did a lot for him. I won't say he owes me, but lotto numbers would be nice. We both laughed, and I held on to that laugh a second longer than I needed to. Vivian's story makes me emotional, and it hits close to home for me because I am an eldest daughter as well. And as the eldest daughter of an immigrant family myself, growing up, I didn't know my own identity outside of the roles I had. I only knew how to be useful, how to be the parentified child, how to listen, how to be a filial child. I did what I was told. I didn't know there could be more than that. I just thought that was my life. And I felt that way for a long time, but it especially hit me hard during the pandemic when I was forced to sit with who I was and actually figure out who I am as well. I see this pattern constantly in my clients too. The struggle that they have to know their identity outside of their responsibilities, their relationships, or their job titles. Sometimes they feel like they are simply the engineer, they are simply the real estate agent, they are simply the big sister, the eldest brother, the oldest son, right? The eldest son, or that they only know how to be a mom, they only know how to be their role. They don't know how to be anything else. And many of them believe, and as I did believe too, that if I let go of the role that I had as an eldest daughter, I would be nothing and that I would become nothing. But moments like these are asking us if we could ever make room to love and understand ourselves. So, one thing I would love for you to do this week is to really truly ask yourself if you took off the role you were known for, the role, the responsibilities, even just for an hour, would you still know who you were underneath it? I'd love for you to sit with that. You don't have to come up with any answers, but really allow your mind to just kind of flow through it and allow yourself to process those emotions. Next week, we're going to go somewhere heavier. Surviving harm from the very people who were supposed to love you, going no contact with them, and what it means to truly find a home for you. Now, if any part of this episode felt close to home, that's not a coincidence, that's an invitation. To those I'm destined to meet next, I'll see you soon.